Welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, March 28th, and we have a great show for you. We are continuing our 3-interview series on the Housing Authority candidates, part of a bigger series on all competitive races in townwide elections for the election that is on Tuesday, May 7th. And again, today we have Kimberley Richardson. Kimberley, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Running for Housing Authority, I ask all candidates the same thing. I ask all people the same thing. What have you been doing your whole life? What's going on? Tell us about yourself.
Oh, what have I been doing my whole life? My whole life raising children, which I have 8 and they're all adults. So I think I'm done with that portion of my life. Well, maybe not so much. I think kids will always be needing their mom for something. But mostly a mother. I have been working for the state of Massachusetts within the trial court for about 27 years. I've been living in Brookline, going on, I think, 12 years. And I've been doing a lot of volunteering of my time in a way that feels pretty good for me, where I'm trying to promote change. Yeah, so that's kind of what I've been doing in a very small nutshell.
And so running townwide is a big commitment. And in fact, Housing Authority is an even bigger commitment. It's a 5-year term, not the typical 3-year terms. How did you decide to run for Housing Authority?
I've been a resident for Brookline Housing Authority since 2011 or 12. Forgive me, I'm not quite sure, but I've been a resident, and I guess mostly my decision was because I know that the Housing Authority commissioners are the decision-making of all things Brookline Housing Authority, and living here and experiencing a various of things. I thought it'd be important to lend my voice in a space that helped bring, I don't know, a resident perspective, bring a different set of eyes and voice to this body.
So you're all in. Of course, some folks know you came up just short last year when you ran. It was an incredibly close election against an incumbent. This year, it's an open seat. So you're not running against that sort of uphill battle, but that doesn't necessarily make it easy. Tell us some of the things that you're focused on in your candidacy, and if you are elected, some of the things that you hope to really work on or bring attention to.
Well, first, let me point out that, yeah, I ran last year, and people keep saying you almost won, right? Very small. And I really feel like I won, Tommy, because I brought a lot of awareness to BHA, knocking on doors where people didn't even know that BHA existed. And so now a lot of people know in the town. And so it was a win-win for me, even though I didn't win, if that makes sense. And can you repeat your other question to me? I'm sorry, you said about bringing. I apologize because
Yeah. So if elected, what are some of the things you want to bring focus to, or some of the issues you want to take on?
Yeah. So one, I think making sure that the residents are focused first, if that means a resident focused first approach. And that means, like, when we're making decisions, if I'm lucky enough to win, right, and I'm sitting on this board monthly, and doing the work that I do, I want to make sure that my focus is on the needs of the residents. And I'm not saying that other people aren't doing that, right? But as a resident, I understand how a decision about a budget directly impacts the residents. And so I want to make sure that other people really, really understand it in a way that I think that I can bring, that others that are on there currently can't. Other than, like, well, I shouldn't say that. I take that back, because we do have a BHA resident on that, and I think possibly that she understands. I don't know her personally, but I just think it's just bringing a different perspective and valuing residents in a way that I don't think that has been happening. But also, as I said before, I want to have an opportunity to have a seat at a table where the decisions are being made. And yeah, so yeah.
So now I was poking at your website a little bit and looking at some of the things there. Um, one one item you list is sort of increasing the options for housing. I presume you mean more units, but more vouchers. What are your thoughts on how we can get there? How is it a money problem? Is it just a matter of willpower? Is it the town doesn't want them? How do we get there? How do we get more units?
I wish I had that answer. I don't have it, but I want to work with people to figure it out, right? I want to, whether that's increasing housing by changing zoning laws. I just want to ensure that we have more housing, and not only housing, but safe and clean and um housing that people, when they come home, they feel like they're home, and not, you know, spaces where that they just you know what I mean, like a roof. It's more than, I want more than a roof over your head, but to feel safe when you're there, so you can call a place home. But yeah, I have a lot of priorities and wishes that I don't necessarily have all the answers for, but I'm willing to work with people so that we can find those answers, so that we can make this change that's really, really important.
Another item that's on your list is services. And I think this ties into the answer you just gave. The simplistic thinking of Brookline Housing Authority is they're a real estate company, right? They have buildings, residents pay their rent, they make sure that, the water is running and that the roofs don't leak. But certainly BHA has some services, and I'm sure you've got ideas for additional services. Can you give us a feel for what sorts of services exist or could exist or should exist? How does BHA tie in with the residents on a day-to-day?
So let me say this, as far as resident services, I think BHA is doing a good job right now, right, of some of the services that they are providing. And I've been collaborating with BHA in some of these services through another board that I sit on, Women Thriving. And so we collaborate. But you can never have enough services, right? But, you know, providing mental health services, or connecting. BHA has been doing that. They've been partnering with Brookline Mental Health Center to make that more accessible. So I don't have a lot of complaints. Can we do more? There's always a way to do more. But what I would say is, the same way that their BHA is doing a good job providing services right now, then they can do. We can also do other things more, right? Like the maintenance on the house, on our apartments and things like that. So the way we have great people in the resident service office, and I want that little small piece that's not really small, the way they're doing that, I want that to be in all of VHA services, right? Like the way we, for example, maintenance services, or the way they take care of the property on the inside of the building, right? I talked about last time, like, you can come outside, and if people drive by land and look at the landscaping here, you would, as beautiful it looks on the outside, you think it looks really beautiful on the inside. So I want the services to trickle down in every parts of and how we operate in BHA.
Now, I'm not asking you to throw stones, but I know there are some folks who have been critical of some of the maintenance inside the units or inside the hallways and common spaces. Can you give us a sense of where there's opportunity, or maybe even try to understand why things aren't as they should be?
Yeah, I don't want to throw stones at people, but sometimes I do. And if I threw one here and I hurt someone's feelings, I'm going to apologize ahead of time, maybe. Yeah. But I think, a lot of times it's about, we talk about money, that we don't have the money, we don't have the resources or the manpower to take care of things. And I've been hearing that a lot. most of the time I've been here. And for me, that's not acceptable because if I can see you take care, and I don't know how much it costs. I don't know that budget that they have to make sure they beautify the outside. But if you have a budget for the inside, I just feel like that's not a priority. It's important, right? But the insides are important. This is where our kids live. This is where our seniors live. This is where we're living. And if people are breathing in mold, that's detrimental to their health, right? So let's figure out how we can make the money, put it in the right places so that people can have quality of life living here. I don't just take my rent and say you're going to take what you get, right? That's just not okay. So yeah, let's figure out ways. There's money, Tommy. There's always money to be found, and let's find the money. Let's prioritize the people who live here. And I just I want an opportunity to be able to do that. I want people to understand that coming home every day to an apartment that might have a hole in the wall or a non-working stove or broken cabinets, that doesn't feel good. And we want our residents to feel good. We want our residents to feel safe. Let's find the money. Let's do it. We can figure it out. Don't say federal gets more money than the state. Okay, let's figure out how we can turn this federal money into state money. I don't know. I'm not a money girl, right? I don't know about all of that, but I can learn about that and I can work with people to figure it out. And I want us to figure it out. I don't want to make excuses. I want us to get the work done because our residents deserve that.
You raise a point that I think would be helpful for viewers, and that is that although BHA is the umbrella, not all housing comes from the same place or has the same sources of funds. And in fact, creation and maintenance of housing is incredibly complicated because there's like 5 different federal programs and 3 different state programs, and they stack on top of each other in funny ways. And some of the housing already existed and BHA bought it, and other housing was given to it, and other housing they built, right? So what seems really simple on the surface to somebody driving by is actually really complicated. One of the things that BHA has been doing a lot of recently is building and renovation, these big capital projects. So as you know, Kimberly, Pleasant Street, Longwood Ave, heck, Marion Street is a crater where there used to be housing, and they've torn it down. They're going to rebuild more housing that's more accessible, climate focused, better for the residents. And then the next project on the docket, if they can secure funding from the town, is 22 High Street, right? The Walnut Street area. Do you feel like this is the right direction? Do you feel like they've got it figured out? Or are they getting all of this work wrong? Are they misprioritizing some things?
I'm not going to say they're misprioritizing things, right? Because everyone deserves to be in a safe, environmentally friendly home. And I'm happy for Longwood and Pleasant Street and all those residents that get to live in these beautiful new, right, renovated properties. And I think all of BHA should have an opportunity to do that. I heard you say that people driving by might think it's simple. I want to be clear that I don't think this is simple at all, right? I know that it takes work, hard work, trying to figure it out and get the money and get things done. And I still think that we can do it. It's we have billionaires, right, that live in Brookline also. And I don't know how that works, right? How do we knock on their doors and say, "Can you give us some money?" I don't know. But anyway, back to, do I think this is I think prioritizing all housing is important, and I know that High Street is next, also another federally funded, right? Like, so all of these buildings that have gotten renovated, and I keep thinking about the state funded housing that has families, that has, young children that are growing up in molded building. And people want to, they'll probably say, Kimberly, there's no mold in these buildings. Stop saying that. I can say that because I know, because it's in my building and I can smell it, right? And I'm glad I don't have young kids anymore. And thank God they're okay, right? Because they were young when we moved here. Thank God they're okay. All right. So do we, I know that BHA is getting money. maybe like what they're trying to get money from the towns with the CPA, right? And if I'm not mistaken, maybe it's like 10 million. That's really not a lot when it comes to trying to renovate also, right? We think that ourselves, $10 million, that's a lot of money. Maybe not so much, but can we kind of be using this money for like one state funded property, one family property? Can we renovate Egmont and take care of those residents? I just want everyone in BHA, everyone to be a priority, state and federal, young and old. Everyone deserves, you know, safe place to call home, not just a building to walk into and lay your head every night.
Yeah, and actually, it's interesting. There's some parallels between um prioritizing the buildings and prioritizing the schools, right? And so every couple of years, the town is going to do another school. And of course, everybody wants their school to be great. Um, and but there's an order to things, and Pierce kind of kept getting passed. It's finally going to happen. And then when it's your school, you're like, oh, my kids are in it. Now they have to go somewhere else. And so there's displacement, and then you got to come back. But what you mentioned, which you've mentioned a couple of times, which I don't think the viewers have any reason to know, is that much of the federal housing that gets the federal operating subsidies run by the BHA is for seniors and folks with disabilities, whereas much of the state housing is family housing. And it's typical that a building is predominantly one or predominantly the other. That's just the way it's always been done. And so the family buildings tend to be state buildings. And the second half of that is that the state government doesn't provide as much money per unit as the federal government does for operating and for maintenance. And I'll tell you, that's something that I'm working to try to catch us up each and every year. I think it's important at the state level. So it's not random that the family housing is of a lower quality, of a lower maintenance quality than the senior housing. It's this function. That's not to blame anyone, but that's to explain your point that we've got to do better by the family housing. And that means getting creative or getting some policies changed or finding some extra money. It's got to be something, right? And I just wanted to explain, because I know that we've talked about it privately, but the viewers, they don't know all the ins and outs of housing like you and I do. So I wanted to just
Well,
make
one,
that
thank you for
point.
explaining that. And can I say something really quickly?
Yeah.
So thank you, one, for explaining that to the viewers. And when we think about the most vulnerable people live in BHA, right? The most vulnerable people in our communities. And who's that? The seniors, the people who are living with a disability, and our children that's in family, right? So those are the three most vulnerable people in our community. And so we're taking care of the seniors and the people who are living with a disability. But what about the children, right? We have to make everyone a priority. So I just wanted to be able to say that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, thank you. We've got about 10 minutes left. I want to ask you a little bit about the campaign itself and what you've got in mind. Don't divulge any secrets, but what you've got in mind in terms of reaching voters. It's not very easy, right? 63,000 people in town, and many people are influenced by the schools. Many people are influenced by the roads. But Brookline Housing Authority, most people in Brookline aren't interacting with on a day-to-day basis. So how are you going about capturing their attention? How are you letting them know this is such an important race?
Um, one, we're I don't know. I guess mostly I'm just explaining, about this community, VHA, that'll, again, like I said to you before, a lot of people were not aware of. I couldn't reach every door, but I want to continue to try to reach, as many doors as I possibly can, to explain to people who we are at BHA. We're the most vulnerable in this community, right? And that we deserve more, better, the same as others. And so I'm just going to continue to express how passionate I am about prioritizing the residents, because I think a lot of times people, we forget about the people, this community, the residents, they're the people. And I want them to be like the front of the focus of this campaign. The reason why I do everything that I do, Tommy, in this town is I do it with the lens of the people. If I'm sitting on the police advisory community, I do that in a way because, there was a time where we had this walk and talk, and it didn't feel good that people that were living in BHA were being policed, so everything that I do, the women thriving, I do that because I want other women to thrive, single mothers. So I just want to I'm just focusing on the people. I'm running this campaign with a focus on the people, changing the lives of the people that live in BHA.
Do you have a website?
Brookline, this is Kimberly for Brookline with, with the number 4.
That's right, Kimberly. Why don't you spell it for them, because people know how to spell Brookline, but you've got an extra E, so tell them about it.
I do. So it's Kimberley, Kimberley, the number 4, Brookline. So look, please check out my website, see the things that I want to do. Call me up and talk to me. And maybe I can make you understand why I'm really passionate about doing this. People think I'm crazy for doing it again. But I do it, right? I put this work in because I want to make change. And so I throw my hat in the race and I'll do it over and over again, right? To ensure that BHA residents are heard. And so I want BHA residents to call me. Also, tell me what their priorities are, because everything that I do when I'm doing this race, I'm doing it with a focus on them.
Now, you mentioned a couple of different other things that you do that are town community oriented, either in government or in sort of the nonprofit or advocacy sector. You mentioned Women Thriving. You mentioned I think it's the Reimagining Police Task Force. I might be wrong on that.
Yeah.
Tell us some of the other things you're doing, or sort of if these things have a common thread. Tell us about all the other work you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm a town meeting member. That's first. That's really important for my precinct. And, and being a town meeting member where you get a chance and opportunity to vote on the things that affect Brookline, whether it's the budget or things like making sure we have access to free Wi-Fi. We were able to pass that in town meeting, right? So I'm town meeting. I'm on the police advisory committee. I'm one of the board of directors of Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity, which is where I started, which is where a lot of my passion lies, where we have done a lot of work trying to make, you know, see how inequitable the schools were for kids of color. The Board of Women Thriving, the board of Brookline Community Development Corporation that tries to create affordable housing in Brookline. So I'm immersed in a lot of different bodies in Brookline, and all those things feel really people focused. So, I just want to change. I just want to make change for people, a community, so yeah, yeah, that's pretty much.
Yeah. Now, if
I
we
think,
are, that's great. It's a lot, actually. It's a lot.
yeah,
It's hard to balance all of that. I know I've been there.
yeah,
Thinking about the location of BHA properties. Obviously, it's pretty rare BHA builds a single family home or a 2-family home. Their buildings are bigger, but they do feel clustered, right? There's a cluster at Egmont. There's a cluster at High Street. And then there's a few sort of in near Harvard, near the Stop and Shop. Is there a place in town you'd like to see the BHA bring some housing that maybe doesn't have as much there as you think it should?
South Brookline. I'm down for South Brookline, Tommy. And I
Yeah,
know
well, as
you,
you know, right, that there's the Hancock Village units, which have
I,
inclusionary zoning. That's not a BHA property.
yeah, no, I
Um,
know,
but
I know.
you make a good
Yeah.
point.
I just think that, and I think we had this conversation before when we were doing oh, I don't know what that thing they were doing in the town, trying to ask people these forums about how they can build more affordable homes and things like that. And I talked about South Brookline, and it's not ideal. But I guess to answer your question, any any place where there's a vacant lot or anywhere that there's I haven't did this research, but if there's a space where there's vacant lots or huge abandoned properties, why can't we make those properties VHA property? Why can't we make those affordable homes for people? We need more. I can never say enough about how much housing, because when you don't have a place to lay your head, everything else in your life is not gonna is it's not gonna work. It's everything's falling apart. Your mental health, your physical health. You need to have a safe place to be at home. And so I say anywhere we could build housing, let's build it. Why not?
So follow the opportunity.
Follow the opportunity. I like that. Yes.
What else you got? We got a couple of minutes left.
We got a couple
I'm
minutes
happy
left.
to talk housing with you, or I'm happy to talk about other stuff with you. What else is going on? What do you want us to be thinking about?
Well, you made a comment about being able to, people might think that I'm very busy and, I have a lot on my plate and that maybe I can't balance this. And so maybe 10 years ago when my children were younger, maybe that might be true. But I think that doing the work that feels right, I do the work that feels right for me. Therefore, I'm able to balance. I know how to prioritize my time and my passions. And so, um, you know, I'm gonna keep working till like I'm not breathing also. So I don't know. What else am I gonna do with my time? Because I want, I think mostly, Tommy, and I know we got only maybe 2 minutes left. When you grow up in poverty or you grow up in trauma, you want to bring a difference to other people. And because my life was pretty hard and I didn't have a lot of help, I want to help. And so wherever I can lend my voice to help, I'm going to try to do that. So that's mostly why I want to be on the board of BHA, because I want to lend a voice that and a perspective that I don't think anyone else can bring, that voice and perspective, not like I can. It's very unique. And I just want to help. And I just have a passion for the people. Yeah.
But I don't doubt you can balance your time, and in fact, if you got this position, maybe you'd ease off of something else somewhere or other to make it work, right? That's the wonderfulness about volunteering, is you kind of ebb and flow, and obviously, all of these other places you've been involved with, that brings connections, right? That's relationships that may be useful as a commissioner if you are elected. So it makes sense to me. But you are right. We do have to wrap it up. Folks, you've been watching TV on TV here on Brookline Interactive Group. We were just talking with Kimberley Richardson. You can find her online at Kimberley, Kimberley, for Brookline. That's her website. She's running for the Housing Authority to be one of the 5 commissioners. There are 3 people in the race. I encourage you to check it out. The election is Tuesday, May 7th. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And we are going to keep doing TV on TV every Tuesday and every Thursday at 2:30 up through the election, because there are so many candidates. Next week, we've got Lynn Sweet for Housing Authority. And we also are going to get into I don't know, we're going to get into the school committee candidates or the select board candidates. I haven't even decided yet, and it's next week. This is the fast-paced life we lead here in Brookline, here with elections here on Brookline Interactive Group. Kimberley, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Folks, we will see you next week, and don't forget to vote.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine. Lift off as the clock gets started. That's 1.